Ron? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. It is 12:02. We are calling this meeting to order. It is a special meeting of the Bay Oaks Recreational Campus Advisory Board, commonly known as BORCAB. It is November 18th, 2020 at 12 noon, and we are in the chambers. We have all of our members present. Thank you. That is wonderful. Thank you. And would you all please rise for our pledge to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which is one nation, and liberty and thank you. This time I would ask for approval of the minutes of our November 3rd meeting.
Jana Holmes, I approve the minutes.
Motion by Jana. We have a second. Beth? And any discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That moves us right into our program for today, items for discussion. And, I think that we need to check with Dan.
Yes, so Dan was given a phone number to call in if he is available. So if the phone rings, that he's not being rude, it is Dan that we will put on speakerphone so he can partake in the meeting. I did want to make another comment that there is a meeting following this, so we have to keep it a little shorter than normal. So we're going to try and stay on track. I'll let Betty continue, and then there are a few handouts in front of you as we go along with the agenda.
Okay. I have not had my little phone ring, so I assume that Dan is not able to join us quite yet.
Betty, I left my glasses in the car. I gotta go out and get them. Please go on. Get my glasses.
Oh, okay.
You need your glasses? Is it a mask?
All right. The first item on our agenda is for the band shelter. And I think that that came up. This is saying that we've got about 15 minutes to talk about it. So hopefully we can stay within those time parameters today so that we can cover as much as possible. I think that the reason that that's on there is that our original plan showed a band shelter that was going to take advantage of the large field and the adjacent field as well, so that it would be what we thought was the ideal location for the band shelter. When we got this information, it looks like it just kind of backs up to the community center. And that was not what we had recommended. And so that would be our first topic of conversation today.
If I can chime in, Betty, what we're here today is to kind of make sure that all of the needs of the board have been met. I'll kind of jump ahead. This larger handout here is a list of most of the motions, all of the board recommendations. It dates back, a few years, some of them. Moving forward with the band shell, I've been asked that any visuals, if you see, I know Becky Bodner, a previous board member, she submitted visuals, pictures of the Bonita band shell that she really liked.
I did as well.
So any visuals that you have, feel free to drop them off, email them to me, and we will pass that along to the DRMP. They kind of have an idea of what the board is looking for.
Thank you for
I
that.
believe I sent one in the packet of
I have yours as
information.
well,
You have my
correct, yes.
amphitheater too.
I have one to send you too that I just received the other day. This was done in a park in St. Louis. And they revamped the whole area and put this, I mean, it could go in, I have a picture over here, I can just hand it around. It can go probably in any area, but the nice part about it is that it has acoustics in it, so it's not like just having a roof over like a dugout kind of thing where they can turn the bleachers around. I mean, this actually is designed for sound, but it's still a cover that they use for multi-purpose. So I'll email that
Yes, please.
to you.
Yep.
And yet the visibility, they could still see everything. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, it doesn't come down like an amphitheater per se, even though they use it as an amphitheater, it's just at the top, and then it, you know, you can put whatever seating or staging or anything under it, but it has all kind of acoustics on the top of it.
That's a valid point, really valid point.
If you just put a roof on, the sound's gonna deaden and go nowhere, you
Right.
know, I mean.
Yep.
thank you for bringing that in, Karen. I appreciate that. And that certainly shows that everybody would be able to see everything. I think my concern with this other one was that,
The other one definitely had a back on it, and you had to be like a certain area, which is the way most amphitheaters are.
right?
But this one serves as both. And the print on that article is so small, I had to like
This is nice, it's nice looking.
deal with it, but they noted in the article about it that how versatile, or the whole idea was the versatility. So, actually, I can send the article to everybody, and then good luck trying to read it.
Good. Thank you for bringing that in. That's very significant. Okay, well, we still have a little bit of time on this, on the band shelter. Was there anything else that,
I'll have a final question. You know, I know that we're being limited to our $1 million budget or whatever it is,
5.5.
or 5.5. Where did I come up with 10?
It was our wish list.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
But I still think that we can involve, you know, Friends of Bay Oaks and get some fundraising going. This, that we could maybe, you know, start with this first building, but then literally within that next year have enough to continue on and do museum and that type of thing. And I understand we can't do the fundraising, but that's what we have Friends of Bay Oaks for.
that's right.
Sorry to interrupt, Karen. There is another handout here. This is from Paul directly. I know in our last BORCAB meeting, it was mentioned that the board would like to have updates as often as possible. So I'll just read this for the record. Did everyone receive the printed copy? RMP fleshed out the comments from our meetings over the past year with BORCAB, and we think we created an incredible design. Unfortunately, incorporating everything we could from BORCAB's wish list plus a budget to run up over 4 times the currently available funding. In order to develop economically valuable plans, we had to start value engineering. To date, we have altered the design and cut the project into smaller phases that can be built over time, while to the greatest extent possible, preserving the overall goals of the project and the programs that Allison is managing. We are still about 25% over budget, so we are looking at alternative materials, construction techniques, and site planning adjustments, including at other projects like Bayside Park. Get this project to a position that the town can afford to construct. So this was directly from Paul, the gentleman that's attended the meetings previously. I do want to make sure the board is aware that with that being said, anything we continue to add to the existing plan, we will have to eliminate something else. I know Roger's made that clear, Chelsea has. So improving the band shell, that may mean we need to look at reducing the main room, things like that. So please keep that in mind as we continue this little project, that anything we add, there will unfortunately have to be something removed. So sticking with the agenda, any recommendations, I'll be happy to take them now. Any visuals will really help the engineering firm. I do have the one with Barbara. Karen will send the others.
'Cause I think that we did have a couple of visuals
Yes.
that were excellent, that showed what our view was, what we wanted for the band shell. And using the entire area out there, the best of our ability. And I mean, in that way, we were able to have events that we had been talking about.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is what we were looking at as a conceptual plan, they took and put into, the CAD system that they have and really, made it presentable. But what they're saying is that because of what we all decided we wanted to have done, it was 4 times what the budget will allow. So they had to go back and do a complete, reevaluation of what it is we can do, given the programs that we need to be able to offer now. We never got a copy of that visual, and that would have, I think, for the purpose of this conversation, would have been helpful
Yes.
to really sort of bounce ideas off. But again, what Sarah is saying is that obviously if we put one thing in, we have to take another thing out.
Right.
And I think Allison and her staff and DRMP have looked very carefully to determine, more importantly than what our design is, are we able to,
That's Dan.
are we able, was that Dan?
Yes.
Are we able to continue with the programming that Allison currently has and what we propose for the future? And I think that's the goal here, obviously, in terms of being realistic.
Hi,
But I
Dan.
just wish we had that plan in front of us so that we could have talked about it.
Yeah.
I was sort of expecting.
A handout that Chelsea passed out during the last meeting. Let me see.
We're just getting started, Dan, and,
I tried calling.
oh, well, we're all here. We have a full
far as-
board.
As far as the band shelter, what if it's not adding, it's just changing? I mean, it might not cost, you know what I mean? It might just be a better idea that we have. It might not be where we have to take anything else away, we just don't want it facing the back, on the back of the building. There's some simple things
Holly.
that won't cost.
Dan is on the line. We just need permission from the board for Dan to be able to participate in this meeting.
Yes.
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 Do we have approval for Dan to participate with us in this?
Yes.
All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Dan, you have it, 7-0.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, well, we're just happy to have you with us, and good health to you, please. We just got started, and we're talking about the items for discussion that were on our agenda, and we started on the band shelter. And the point being that if we make changes, there's a chance that something's going to have to be taken off. And I don't think that was really what we were thinking when we did our presentation. When we said what we would like to have, we were pretty specific on items.
Sorry to interrupt, Betty. We are making copies of that handout, Barbara, so we'll have a few extra so everyone can see that last plan.
This is the amphitheater that I sent in, and I believe that was just sort of what we were thinking of in terms of an amphitheater.
Exactly. Isn't that the one at Benita?
Well,
No.
let me see.
Annabelle, isn't it?
No, this might be a stero.
Oh, sterile.
Oh, okay.
Any recommendations, feel free to email them to me. I will say that compared to what is at the current plan, that's far more expensive and the funds currently aren't there. However, like I said, we'll have to remove certain things, so we're happy to continue taking, recommendations, and we'll forward them on to the engineering.
Can I say something?
Yes, Lee.
Okay, first of all, I think we need to back up a little here. Okay? I watched, first of all, I watched the council meeting Monday and was surprised here that apparently there is an extra $1 million in the $10 million loan that's flexible that the town could take. Extra $1 million. So now you may be talking about $11 million. We're in the dark here right now today, as far as I'm concerned. We're told that if we change this or that it takes away from this or that. What we don't know, and we can't know because Paul isn't allowed to be here with us today, is how much are we going to have to take away? What are the costs of the band shelter, and what is the cost of this building that was presented to the council 3 or 4 weeks ago? What exactly are we dealing with in dollars here? I don't know, and none of us know. And I think Paul could really have helped us with that, or can in the future, if he's allowed to come here, paid to come here.
Sorry to interrupt, Lee. I spoke with Betty about this topic previously, that any questions for Paul, kind of a way to get answers from him without him attending a meeting, feel free to email them to myself, to Allison, and we will pass them on to him directly and have answers
That's all
for
well and
everyone.
good, but I don't think that's a way to plan. I think we need, I think Paul needs to be here to help us to answer our questions if we really want to get into presenting a better campus that I think may be about to be presented. So here's what I think. I think we need this, members of this committee need to put our lobbyist hats on and go straight to the council. I'm not sure that the new council people, at least 2 of them, know or understand what we presented, what we recommended to the former council, to the previous council, in joint meetings with that council. I'm not sure they know or understand that what we were recommending, what we had designed, was essentially, it was presented here, a room full of people. It was endorsed or very well liked by the president of the local chamber of commerce. It was endorsed by the president of the Bay Oaks, Friends of the Bay Oaks Association. We had other people who were willing to support what we envisioned. I'm not sure that 2 members of the new council, new members of this council, know or understand or know about that. But I want to make sure they do. And I think that we need a joint meeting with this current council and to put on our, as I said, to put on our lobbyist caps and help this town administration and its council go find the money. Give the people of this community a really first-class, first-rate community campus.
Sorry to interrupt, Lee. I know Barbara recently presented to the council, And at any council meeting, the board is welcome to speak during committee and board items.
Well, I
Well,
intend to do that if
It
I
will
get.
need to be a direction from the chair and a consensus from the board itself.
I'm going to be asking for that later on, because I've written something that I would like to cite to the council and perhaps put in, and perhaps publish in the Observer and the Beach, Fort Myers Beach websites, various websites.
The board can, Sarah, for the record, the board is welcome to set a date to have someone come before council to give exactly what Lee is speaking, to make sure your voice is
Okay.
heard. With that also being said, this large sheet, to kind of stick with the agenda, are all the items that I could think of that the board has recommended for this plan. If everyone wants to take a few minutes to take a look at it, I'd be happy to make edits as needed. But with the funds that we currently have, we strived hard to meet the programming needs of our community. So as
we're
you
not
all,
meeting the-
as you all know, I mean, right now we have one small room that are utilized for the youth, then the seniors, then the teens, then aerobics. So with the floor plan, I believe that you all received last meeting, if there's any questions regarding that, as you see in the status of it, there's a C01, which is the handout that I just gave. And then the handout from last week, which is labeled the AP 102, that is more of the designated floor plan. That's what you can reference in this nice big sheet of paper.
How do we make changes, though? We're being asked to make recommendations on changes. We have no idea what's going to get cut as a result of us wanting to change this or that. I don't know that we ought to be probably cutting anything in that 13,000 square foot building that was presented to them. First place, I happen to think it's too small. But how can we sit here today and make recommendations on what to cut or add when we don't know the sliding costs of all this? We can't do that. I don't think we can do that, because we don't have Paul here guide us on what happens if we want X amount of something in the community building, or we want to put this nicer band shelter over here. We can't. So I think that's why I said, I think we need to back up a couple steps here. Put our lobbyist hats on, make certain that this council fully understands concept, the original concept that this committee worked on for 3 years. 3 years. Beginning in October 2017, when I joined this committee. And its purpose and its concept, and what it could do, what it could mean to this community. I want to present something to the council at their next meeting to explain that. I want to make sure they understand what it is we've been doing for the last 3 years here. I'm not sure they do. So, you can wrestle with these band shelter and the other things, but in the end, what does it mean if we don't know what we're chopping out by doing this? And,
I'll be happy to ask if. Right.
Yes,
well, I
exactly.
think we need numbers, but I think we need more than that.
Be happy to look into that. From what I'm hearing is we have a consensus with the board for a member to speak in front of council.
Well, what I want to do is read to you, it's short, but what I intended, with your permission, tell the council, say to the council, and to perhaps publish for all of the island residents to see. Because I think it sums up the intent, the purpose of the work we've been doing over these years. I want to make sure everybody understands that. And I think we may be able to persuade some on the council to believe what we believe, that this should be done and the money should be found to do the right thing, and not a lesser thing. We should do the whole project. Maybe not all at once. I understand limitations there. To make it very clear that this will be phases, and hopefully, maybe even some kind of timeline. Let me read you what I would like to say to council, because I won't do this if you don't agree with it.
Mine.
It's me.
Oh.
So let me get it up here. Okay. This is very short, to the point, but our concept and our ideas and our purpose led us to over these years. This council is an opportunity to do something that's never been done here before. We have an opportunity to give the residents of this island something they've never had here before. Gathering place unlike anything that's ever been offered here. A new, nicely designed, flexible campus of recreation, entertainment, socialization, and education. All of it designed to be relevant to this town's diverse population. A place for all ages, all interests, all levels of energy and mobility. For all who seek a place to meet, for all who seek a place to meet for conversation, exchanges of ideas and commonality, for recreation, concerts, exercise, educational classes, in cooking, healthy living, art, dance, creative and resume writing, medical tutoring, hurricane preparedness, job fairs, and a variety of resident requested classes. From the eldest to the youngest, moms and dads, widows and widowers, youth organizations, and adult organizations. A gathering place so attractive in its diversity, it defines and personifies community. A place no resident will be able to resist, sticking their head in the door and look forward to returning. Please don't do this on the cheap. Find the money. Do it in phases if you must, but make it clear to the residents that this is the plan and it won't be compromised. Our committee's plan has already had endorsements from the head of the local chamber, the president of the Friends of Bay Oaks, both of whom attended the presentation and explanation of the plan we recommended to the previous council. Our Bay Oaks Advisory Committee invites you to meet with us and exchange ideas for creating what can be an extraordinary and beautiful community gathering place for all of the island's residents, please accept that invitation. This is what I believe was our intent, our purpose, our creation. And I think we should do everything we can do to lobby this council, lack of a better word, lobby this council, put it this way.
May I request that you turn your sound off on your
Yeah,
ringer?
I'm sorry. I
No,
can't
that's
stop
fine.
that
Thank
when I'm-
you. Thank you.
And this is obviously a conversation that all
Yeah.
of us need to have with regard to, if that is our desire, if that is the consensus of this committee. I agree with, in concept, I agree with what you're saying, Lee. What I think troubled me more than anything else was that I was expecting this whole concept be realized eventually, having it phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, as the funding became available. And if it had been presented with all that we wanted, and part 1 was going to be what we could afford now, and looking at what could be afforded after that point, would have met not only the budget criteria, but also BORCAB's criteria, so that nothing was lost. And it was all
Right.
done according to what we had worked on, and what the conceptual design had indicated. So obviously, what they have done is they've revamped that whole notion of a long-range plan, tried to put everything in this one, what is it, from 60,000 square feet to 13,000 square feet?
Yes.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
13,000.
Yes.
I think it's,
I'm sorry.
right. And so I think maybe the disconnect here is the decision that was made to do this, plan with no provision for future phases, for adding all the things that we wanted. And for example, the amphitheater that I thought was, what did I do? Here we go. Which is a similar thing to Bonita. But this, if this was going to be phase 2, I think that's fine. I could live with, having an open air concert area, but not to have it integrated in such a way that when we do get available funding for the next phase, that no longer becomes a possibility.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think maybe what we're hearing is that, there was some kind of lapse of communication with regard to what those future plans can be. I know that one was, I think it was Paul that had mentioned that, when new funding became available, that's when the basketball court would be torn down. Right? Is that right, Sarah?
As it's stated in here, there is a few items that are currently not in this plan. For instance, indoor track above the court that was discussed, additional locker room and shower space. And the status with that is, as funds are allocated for the new athletic building, this item will then be brought forward for recommendation.
Okay, so, and here, I was looking at this, Sarah, and I looked at where it said status, included in concept plan number 1, which is this.
Right.
But wasn't, for example, that fitness trail to hook up with Kansas?
Correct, and
Yes?
yes, that's shown here to the, I guess it'd be the northeast corner, or the top right. So this yellow line is the fitness trail. And that's where the opening to Matanzas would be.
Where that fitness trail ends is right where Matanzas Past Preserve is?
Yes. Currently where their new entrance.
Oh, okay. So where's the historic center in comparison to what this is? 'Cause-
Literally right where the yellow line ends. It's not very well shown on here. That's part of Lee County, but it is right where that little line ends.
Seems that you go down this road, which is Bay Road, right?
Right.
I don't see Bay Road on here, so that's what's confusing to me. Okay, but then what we wanted was a loop road, what we don't have is a loop road, right? Because it
Exactly.
said that now it's a trail, but it says it's called a loop trail, but it's not a loop trail. I guess maybe that's my And I only got to the first one. So if anybody has some other, now I see what you're saying, what we were wanting has been included in concept B01, which is this. Now, there'll be a concept floor plan 102, which is the other,
Which was the handout that we received. It's,
yes.
Yes.
And we got that here, okay, so
Exactly.
this was included, so all of these things are included, basically except for the culinary center and the fire pit.
with the culinary center, I believe Roger touched on it briefly during the last meeting, is that it's not as much as a culinary center as I think you envisioned. However, it's the large meeting space that he said, for instance, we could bring in, stovetops and hold cooking classes for the community. In an effort to try to stay within our time limit, unfortunately, like I mentioned, we do have a meeting following this. I believe Lee mentioned wanting to speak in front of council. It does need to be a consensus from the board. If everyone wants to send me their recommendations, and then if Lee wanted to see where we go. And then at that time, like he mentioned in his statement, then the board can request a joint meeting with council to further the discussion.
Before we do that, can I just ask a question since we have Dan on the phone? Dan was involved in a lot of this preliminary. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Dan, at all. But I'm trying to get a handle on where the disconnect came between what we envisioned and submitted and then what Roger came back to us with and said, here it is. There's a huge disconnect there. And so before we go back to town council, I'd like to understand and have more information on that.
Okay. Right, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please, Dan.
First, I want to apologize to everyone for last meeting. I ate wrong in my calendar. I apologize for that. But to answer your question, I have been involved with this since 2017, as Lee had mentioned.
Right.
And I remember when we were discussing it, working on and it was just kind of a pipe dream for everybody so it sure would be nice to reach all of Bay Oaks. 2017 to now, I think it's safe to say that it's moved along a lot faster than personally I ever thought it would. I believe that many of the there would to simply answer your question, down to is majority of it is budget restriction. Love to have $20 facility there onto the amount of money that we have available to. I don't know if you were involved or if you remember started it's just swap that we started talking about.
Exactly.
We, way back in the day, had originally talked about coming up with designs of what it could look like with other areas in the heart of the island. It's kind of gone from there to, as Lee had mentioned, asking previous council about their willingness to go forward, and if you remember, millage rate to start saving some money towards this. Now we have the loan. It is in, the 5.5 budget is what we're working with. Everything that we put together that you've worked so hard on, I'd love to be able to do onto phases and being able to have the money to do it.
Something?
Well, yes.
I'm jumping in, I'm new, I've only been to one meeting.
Go ahead.
But so far, I just feel like there's a real lack of transparency. I really do, and I'm not trying to start anything, but I've dealt with town stuff before. And sometimes what the island people, shall I say, feel is kind of pushed to the side. And they kind of just do their thing. And I feel like people have put a lot of heart in this, and I appreciate it because I think it's a great contribution to the island. And I feel like there's so much lack of transparency. Like Beth said, a breakdown of prices or how much each thing will cost, instead of just deciding to push aside what everybody here has, said they wanted. I feel like there's lack of communication And I feel like, okay, that was put on the back of the building. I'm big into the amphitheater thing because I love music, and I think it's an awesome way to gather people and to sense of community. And I think, like, we don't have the prices. How much more would it be to take it off the back and to make it, a single area with a big field around it? We don't have, it's hard to even make any progress here without knowing any of this. And there's great ideas, like, why can't we raise money? I know we can't directly, but, I'd be willing to help with that in any way possible. I just think everything we've brought is just like pushed to the side and said, no, this is just how it is because this is the budget. And I think if we're going to do something, let's do it well and let's do it nice so that it's not something that's just done and we throw the money there and it's done halfway and it's not, the full potential that it could be. And I know things cost money, but why can't we work with it more? Just how I feel.
That being said, it sounds like at least two of us are kind of on the same page to kind of keep rhythm going. Would the board like for Lee to a BORCAB update at the next council meeting?
Yes,
I would.
very much so. And when is that council meeting?
So I'll check with you and I'll get with
Is
Lee.
it the 30th or the 7th? I don't know.
The holidays, I have to double check and I will definitely get with the board. So is that a consensus with the board for Lee to give an update or?
I'm fine with that, and
Okay.
I guess
Yes,
everybody else
indeed.
is, so.
Yes.
But I have a question for Dan. Dan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Dan. Barbara Hill, and I was looking at the information that you, as a council member, received after you left BORCAB committee to now serve as a councilman. How informed are council members individually about ongoing conversations of how this plan came to be? In other words, between what we decided was the concept plan, which DRMP drew as a concept drawing, which we all agreed was fabulous, and then to what we received last month, was it last month, for the council meeting, when Paul gave the presentation, DRMP. Was the council involved in any of that communication? Because obviously what we do here as an advisory board is offer recommendations to council to determine what their take is on it and their opinion, and obviously ultimately their vote. Were there any conversations that you were a part of, Dan?
I can't speak for my fellow council members. They've talked with staff about as far as what they were told or not told. Personally, I can tell you that as brought forth, you had talked about, Paul did say in one of the meetings, I don't remember exactly which one it was, that the way that you presented him from what you guys have worked on, looking like $17 to $20 million. It was very obvious that to get down to 5.5, they were going to have to. Now, was I directly involved in what was time where everything was together? No, I was not.
Who was involved? Who was communicating? Who was communicating with Paul without council, without the advisory board?
Staff was they listened to what I believe the council was trying to say. They were, believe me, listening to what the committee was trying to say as far as the most important issues that were needed to make Bay Oaks what it could be. I think everybody understands the budget restraints over that again, but I think what they heard and what they felt was the right direction is what we were presenting. Tried to make the best out of what they have within the budget that was given to them. And I think what they came back with, although I'm not 100% sold on everything that's there, I think they did a good job of at least trying to listen and trying to communicate with designers to be able to give us something to look at, if not for nothing else, to ideas of what could happen or what we could try to get as much of what is needed or wanted.
Is there a time constraint on this project with regard to this funding? We don't have a limit, right?
As far as I know, no. That may be something that we could ask staff to in on a little more. I
Okay,
don't believe that there's a time restraint. I know that the loan has a term having to pay it back. But again, we're still talking about that $5.5 million. For me, my concern comes in with that $5.5 million where that came. We never talked about a budget. We just talked about what we would like. Budget that everybody guessed it would cost. Obviously, adding 3 buildings, tearing it up, and completely doing everything is going to cost much more. Now we're at the point where we'd love to be able to do worth of renovation, having the money to be able to do it. It's unfortunate, but it's that simple.
If I may, to kind of back off what Dan said and then to help answer your question, the last handout is kind of an overall data collection. It shows how staff found the needs of the community that we found were met with this current concept. We've done different surveys. We had multiple joint sessions with the previous facilitator a couple years ago. I know each and all of you have spoke with residents, recommendations. We have an ongoing email that residents or guests are welcome to email their thoughts, recommendations for this, and we continue to collect this and submit to the engineering firm.
Dan, let's talk about this budget for a minute, this project budget. It's my understanding from listening to the council meeting Monday that there is an extra $1 million that that can be attached to this $10 million loan. Is that correct?
The way it worked out is part of the loan that was going to work not be financed with the loan because of the way of taxing reasons. So there were 3 options that were presented to the council. Change the loan completely, finance some of the structures that were going to be in shared use areas outside the loan, which is eventually decided that they wanted to do. So, not knowing exactly what those structures cost, I believe it was somewhere between $1 and $1 million is the estimate. Structures are going to cost that would have to come from outside of this $10 million loan. Technically, does that mean that money is available? Sure, but it appeared to me that the majority of the council looking at it more as a $9 million loan now, $10 million loan, us financing the structures outside of that loan. So to answer your question, technically yes, but it doesn't appear that that's the direction the majority look at it.
Well, perhaps the majority of the council can have their minds changed. Perhaps we could change their mind. But there is another $1 million above the 10, right? There could be. Is that correct?
Potentially.
Okay. Maybe some successful persuasion here could persuade us. Go ahead and get that extra $1 million and send it to and give it to Bay Oaks, and perhaps begin the project with more than just a 13,000 square foot building that frankly isn't going to be big enough in the future. But there's another $1 million there. Also, I'm really interested in knowing how aggressively the town has gone after grants. I've heard that, well, they're so hard to get, and there's no money available here, and we're a small town, we're on the bottom. I'd remind this council, that the state of Florida gave this town $1 million to buy the Mound House. That was a grant. I believe I think it's the Estero Recreation Department just got a grant from State Department of Parks and Rec or one of those agencies. They just got a grant. I would like to know, and hopefully the council would like to know, how aggressively we've gone after grants for this project. You know?
All I know is that they are always looking at grants. I don't know specifically specifically what grants they have folks directly, something I can ask and
Would you please? Because I'd like to know. When I've asked, I haven't gotten answers that, the answers I'm getting is, I believe this, they haven't gone after grants yet. Because it's too hard, or whatever. I'm being straight with you, Dan, and this committee has been told that by the administration. And I'd like to know if and when they're going to go after state and federal Parks and Rec grants, add to the budget, build a really nice campus that this community deserves. So, you know, I'm really a little suspicious of where we are here now with the quote, with this budget, how we got there,
Okay.
and what we can do about it to increase it.
Barbara?
Just an interjection with regard to that 10 or $9 million that's been allocated for projects here on the beach. It's actually not all for Bay Oaks, as you well know. Part of it is for the infrastructure for Times Square and the redevelopment of Times Square, and part of it is for the redevelopment of Bayside. So I think when the budget was determined for these three CIP projects, the 5.5 million of that 10 million was allocated for this project. And what I'm understanding is that even with this consolidated smaller plan, it is actually still 25% over that 5.5. So we can't ask for that money from that particular loan. Now, it begs the question about grants. I agree with you. We should have been more aggressively, or the administration should have been more aggressively seeking those grants. And of course, it would have been great if our friends of the Bay Oaks had been jumping in on this at the outset so that funding was going to be available through contributions that would augment this budget, but that's not happening. So I think the reality is, in terms of what we now have to do moving forward, is to look at this plan, understand that Allison and Sarah and Roger and Paul came up with something that would meet our needs today, or maybe 5 years from now, and then evaluate. My concern about that is not that it doesn't serve us well. I don't think it's an exciting plan, but that's not the issue. The issue is, I would have preferred the entire concept of what this park could look like today and 20 years from now, and have that as the overall plan from which we would then do phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I think the concern that we all raise is that, you know, that's not a part of the consideration. And to Lee's point, you know, we want those things. We still want those things in. But there's no overall concept plan that shows that's where it's going to be.
And at that public meeting, when they discussed this last month, and Roger and Paul presented this community center, the word phases was never used. It was never used. So the community watching this council meeting, all they knew was, you're going to get this 13,000 square foot building, and that's it. So again, I'm really a little suspicious here, Dan. What, and I agree with our new members. I'm sorry, I forget your name. Holly. I agree with Holly's argument here about transparency. I think she's right on point. I think there has been a lack of transparency with this advisory committee, volunteers, community people who have worked so diligently on this project.
I'll go as far as to say lack of transparency, even to our town council, of what behind the scenes and what was actually
Absolutely.
presented to them.
Absolutely, and there was
Exactly.
more than we know.
Exactly.
But as an example, Dan, of the lack of transparency, I'll give you a real good example. Roger and Paul presented to your council last month was never given to us first. We were never given the opportunity to look at what he was going to present and come up with perhaps options and ideas and solutions to how we could make it, even that one building, better. That's a lack of transparency with this volunteer advisory board. And that has bothered me, it continues to bother me a lot. And I think we need a lot more assistance from the administration of this town. I think Paul should have been here today to help us with this agenda on numbers. Apparently, the administration doesn't want to pay him to be here. I would hope that council decides to tell the administration, go ahead and pay him and have him work with our advisory board, because I think it's absolutely crucial that that happens. And I'm really sorry that neither Paul or is here today.
I think the one concern too is that in the spirit of saving money from paying these land planners, that to move forward, that this was the 30% raise that now had been already approved by council at the last meeting, and that the next time that we, as an advisory board, would have input would be at the 60% design phase and then at the 90% design phase. So for me, though, you know, from a concept plan to the 30% design plan is a huge disconnect. And why would you want to start, you know, plan at a 60% level when in fact this one is already presenting problems? So I think that was, you know, to your point, I think that was really something that we should have had a conversation about.
If I may,
Madam
I know Rob.
Chair, may I-
Yes.
May I touch on a couple of points?
Yes, Dan, go ahead.
And you guys have put together, at the council, Paul and his staff, sent it to us, and it's going to be $17 to $20 million. At that time, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact date of the presentation, but it was put in their presentation as phase one, is phase one, phase two, and it was shown that in order to be able to do everything, testing, it's going to have to be able to be done all at once. So that's how we got to where 3% is. The staff then took into consideration all the information them, council tried to come up with something that would cover as much of the base as possible, it close enough to the budget to have some more discussions about how we can get it budget, or do we have to expand the budget, or discussions. That's, I think, how we got to where what we're talking about now. Important, all being able to us or to present to you is a bad idea. I think if he's going to present to us, we have to be focused on what we're working within. As of right now, we're working with a $5.5 million budget. We have to work on what is important, what are the top 3, 4, 5 things that are important to the committee that we don't currently have. Here was always at the top. The entrance folks was always at the top. Be able to have a constructive conversation about what we can do, what we have now. That's not to say it can't change later. The council could change their minds and you already want to raise the budget. That I don't know, but now we're working within a $5.5 million budget, as Barbara has mentioned, that we're already roughly still over on what we're looking at now. I think if we're going to have Paul come in and we're going to have Paul conversations, I think the conversations need to be constructive and around what we can do with what we're working with now. Important now, opposed to, can we get another $50 from somewhere to build the entire complex?
Yes, Holly?
I feel like we're almost talking in circles, but, I mean, I understand that it went from 17 million or whatever it was, it had to go down to the 5, but why wasn't the committee involved in those changes? I understand it had to happen, but why was it just made and done without any,
I can
talking
answer
to
that.
or anything from the committee?
I
That's
can
the
answer that.
question.
I can answer that, Holly. I was at that meeting last month. And one of the council people, he was Ray Murphy, asked Roger if he had put this before the advisory committee before he brought it to council. And Roger's response was, no, he had not. He didn't want to argue over doorknobs. That was his response, Dan. You were there, you heard it.
Exactly.
I was deeply offended by that. We have never argued over doorknobs. And he passed it off that cavalierly. What that was a total disrespect for this advisory board and complete ignoring of transparency with us. That was a prime example. You were there, you heard them.
That should go in your statement. That's the real crux.
Well,
If I may, Betty, this, like Roger mentioned at our last meeting, this plan is in no way finalized. The purpose of this meeting that the board
I don't
requested
agree with that either.
was to send recommendations and visuals, and then at Lee's December 7th board update, he can request the joint meeting with the council, and that's when a lot of these topics I can further
I
conversation.
go back to the beginning. How do we make recommendations without the input and the numbers from Paul as we go along?
How do we take Roger out of the center of this and deal directly with the architectural firm
And the council.
and the council?
Exactly.
That's the real crux of the whole thing.
Obviously, you know the problem here. The problem is, I think, supported by the majority of your volunteer advisory committee. We're either going to be a recommending agency or we're not. And if we are, we need numbers, we need transparency, and we need to be kept up to date. And we need either Paul or Roger or both in the meeting room with us when we meet.
I think that a part of this is the lack of communication. And I think that that is almost the bottom line. Lack of transparency, that's obvious. Sure, there have been budget constraints. My concern now, when we start talking about the phases, I don't really recall our ever thinking of 17 to 20 million. I don't know where that amount came from, because before we had talked about cost of a building, $1 million, possibly, and we had hoped for 3 buildings. You know, obviously, what we started with was a concept, and we had to start someplace. My concern is that decisions and consensus has to be reached in order for us to be able to continue and get to the next phase. It seems that, and I'll just pick on the band shelter for lack of another spot right now. That was very important to us. And then when we get this, and it looks like it's something that's just tacked on to the back of the community building, that is what we had looked for. So if we were to continue with it the way it looks now, tacked onto the back end of that building, are we ever going to get that band shelter that was our goal in the first place? So I just think that this has been moved through some steps that did not include us. The biggest one, I think, was when Paul and Roger spoke to the council, and when it came back to us, it was, what is that? That doesn't look anything like what our original plan was. And of course, I understand that. The idea of phases had not come up. They weren't talking about phases. If they'd have initially said, okay, understand that we can't do everything at once. This is what we want to start. But again, I go back to that band shelter. If they're going to put it someplace now that is going to prohibit our ever being able to have it the way we want it, how do we get that? How do we get that goal?
And incorporated.
Yeah, so it needs to all come together. I look on this and I see consensus and consensus. And I think that this group has had consensus as we have gone ahead. And as you all are able to take a look at what we have done, it's obvious that we have had consensus. But something was left out. And I think it was the lack of communication. And if it comes down to budget constraints, I understand that. We all have that. But if we'd have realized that it was going to be in phases, we'd have started this a little differently. And we'd have tried to do it in phases. We did not. We gave them a plan of what our goal was, what we would like to see. And of course, that had to change because of dollars again. I don't want us to get into a position that decisions haven't been made, so we aren't going to go forward. I think it's really important that we keep this moving. Because if we don't, what happens? Well, we really need to keep moving.
It was
However,
mentioned, sorry, Betty, it was mentioned, I believe when Roger spoke at last meeting, he did say phase 2, and I think Barbara, you mentioned that you're happy to hear that.
that was just at the last meeting. We did not hear phase 2 before that.
No.
We were not aware of that.
And with regard to bringing DRMP in, does that money that we pay them for these phase designs, does that come out of that 5.5 million?
I'm not, I'll get that answer for you and share it with the board.
So, I mean, that means that, each time it's probably 30,000, each time he's going to, pull up a new design, if we're going to, then we are definitely going backward. Again, I would have just loved to have had this said, in a 20-year plan, phase
Yes.
1, phase 2, phase 3, and
Exactly.
this was going to be phase 1 with all of the limitations, with the idea that the incentive for building the other 2 phases, maybe in 5 years, would be accomplished with fundraising and grants. Unless you see the overall plan to say, this is our dream. And the reality is we only can afford 1/4 of that dream, but let's build just 1/4, not consolidate everything so we get a half-assed building. I'm sorry.
That's true.
It's true, Barbara. I mean, that's exactly what you're about to get. And
And then that'll be the end of it.
it is not,
That's the end of it, yeah.
Any other comments on that? I mean,
Dan,
yes.
it's Lee again. Can you maybe perhaps spearhead a meeting, a joint meeting with the council for us? To get that done?
Sorry to interrupt. During your presentation to the board on December 7th, I confirmed that date. That is when you will request the joint meeting, and I'll be happy to schedule that with the board
Why
as we
can't we
have
request it
previously.
now?
It needs to be in front of the whole council, I presume, if that's accurate, Dan.
Well, I got a councilman on the phone here, and he has some influence, I suppose, with the the rest of the council. You help us do that, Dan.
I can definitely bring it up at our M&P meeting on the 3rd, yeah.
Ah, the M&P meeting. Good, that's good. See?
That is on the 3rd.
That
December
still
3rd.
puts us at the 7th on council.
Correct. If Dan mentions it during the M&P, the council will know that as they receive the agenda packet, that Lee will be speaking and they'll know his questions. So council will be better prepared to, answer any question the board has.
Sarah, there is a question I have on that. I would hope that, usually there's a place on the agenda for committee reports. There used to be, I
There
assume there
is.
still is?
Okay,
Okay, actually, that was skipped over at the last meeting, but they never did
No,
that.
because we could have spoken, no, but you have to say in advance that, an
Okay, well, I
advisory
need to
board meeting.
understand the process there.
And actually,
Right.
if you want to present something, you have to bring it before Betty, and Betty then has to recommend, who's going to be
Well, I
speaking.
want the permission from the whole committee. I want it understood there's a consensus here about what I'm to say. So, that I have a consensus of the committee. So, but, okay, so is that something you do with, before the meeting with the, in other words, as I understand it, a committee report can be longer than the 3 minutes the rest of the community gets.
Yes.
Correct.
I want more than 3 minutes. So I arranged that with the clerk, or,
If I may leave, my understanding is that the board already had consensus that you will deliver the report
Okay,
that
I
you
think
just
you're
read. And then that will be on the agenda. That report will be provided to the council before the meeting to review, to prepare any questions, and then you are given more than 3 minutes, like public comment to.
I know this is boring mechanics, but, so do I do that through the clerk?
Oh,
No.
the board has made that consensus here. I will work with the clerk's office and you will be on the agenda for the December 7th meeting.
He's never let me make a report before, so I don't know how the process works.
Right,
Why is
thank
that?
you. Appreciate it. Okay, that would be on the 7th.
And I'll be in touch with
Pearl Harbor Day,
additional details, so.
Pearl Harbor Day.
Yes.
In an effort to kind of continue moving along, currently, you will be representing the board on the 7th. You will read the statement that was provided. Any recommendations that you have for the building, please email to myself. You can make recommendations here. It's on the record. Like I said, we are limited. I'm not sure if you want to continue with the agenda items or if you have any recommendations or motions that you'd like to have for agenda item A.
Since we do have an agenda, can we continue on? And see what the next item is? I think that we've done enough with the band shelter. Again, with our not putting it in a location that would have to be moved at a later time.
So what
And,
is our we're gonna recommend something on this?
Well, this requires board action, so we're looking at an actual vote,
Yes,
so it's not a consensus
What is it we're
issue.
recommending?
Recommending that we get better communication between the planner and the staff and our advisory board.
We're not recommending anything on the band shelter right now.
Time here
Generally
is
better
recommend
communication.
anything that you would like to see different on the concept plan that was presented.
okay, how do you feel about that on the band shelter? I mean, do we want to let them know that that is not the location that we wanted?
Or the design.
It's not the design
Put
because
it on a slab
I
in the
make
back door of the community center.
we have a long-range plan. I think that that's a part of this. And again, it goes back to phase 1, phase 2. We hadn't had those phases before.
I'd like to make a motion
All right,
that we look at all these items for discussion, from A to E, as part of a larger question of plan that has been presented based on budget and needs that are current. So let me see, how can we add that we are not in favor of the current plan? And I think that really would sort of be all encompassing for all these items. Sure, if I need to reword
Is that your
that.
motion? Yeah.
How we can,
My understanding is the motion on the table that Barbara presented is that the board is with the plan C01, and then the other one presented the floor layout A P102. The board is not in favor of the current concept plan before them.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a second by Karen. Thank you. All right, is there further discussion? All encompassing, Barbara, thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with the unanimous 7-0. Thank you, and thank you for that, Barbara, getting that off the ground. Okay, well, that kind of takes care of our items for discussion. We have any board member items?
Sorry to interrupt, Betty. There was, item E is a little separate. It's the handout attached to the last, I think, 17 pages or so of your agenda. This was requested at the last BORCAB meeting. This is from Jennifer Dexter. This is a kind of a collection of all the information that has been provided to the residents and community of Estero Island, in addition to this other handout also. It was item E. I didn't want that to be skipped over.
well, and like say, for example, you've got Fort Myers Beach News, it talks about the community pool renovations complete. Is that actually part of the Bay Oaks redevelopment project?
Pool will
Wasn't
not,
that sort of,
the plan before us, the pool is not moving, it's staying in place. Correct. So in the large picture, in a sense, it is, yes.
so that is considered part of the redevelopment, the pool, even though it's not going to be moved. In other words, before that 10 million was approved, we were going to do that pool anyway.
Correct,
Yes,
yes, that's,
yes.
So why is it,
shouldn't-
why is this in there then, I guess is my question? Because it has nothing to do with the
I
redevelopment
didn't know it was.
project.
It's part of the 5.5 million?
oh, no. This is just
shouldn't
a collection of all the information about Bay Oaks and the redevelopment that has been given, put out by Jennifer Dexter.
So all information plus the redevelopment. It's not
All right.
just,
Yes, yeah, it's a handout. She just quickly put this together for us after the request from the board last meeting. And then also to kind of coincide with that is the other handout that I provided, showing all the efforts made by staff to gather as much information from the community as possible.
Okay, because just to piggyback on what Barbara was saying on the pool, that had already been determined and should not be in this other budget. I mean,
Correct,
that
yeah.
has nothing
My
to do
understanding
with
is
it.
that it is not. This is just provided to show that the word is out about Bay Oaks, that we are improving the facility in addition to the conversation about the redevelopment plan. As
Okay.
you see, there are a few items with Bayside Park. It's just showing that we are continuing to get the word out to the community about what is going on at Bay Oaks.
That's showing the picture of what this is.
As you see, like, this is provided to the communities. It's a, a concept plan of the redevelopment, so.
Yes.
I'm sure Jenny will be happy to continue to, provide us this information.
this is very helpful. It's nice to be able to have that in terms of what is now public information.
Right,
Exactly.
Thank you, Sarah.
Jennifer, Jenny.
In showing 3 projects that they were talking about. Okay. All right, anything else on that, Sarah, that
I
you
just wanted to make sure
mention?
it didn't get skipped over.
Thank you, and actually, I'm not quite sure if I need to amend that motion to say items A through D rather than A through E.
Yeah,
Yes.
E3
So,
through D instead of through E.
yes,
Yes.
I would like an amendment to my motion to read A through D, not A through E.
Okay. And Jan is going to second that amendment. Everybody understand what we've just done? Okay, thank you. All in favor of the amendment as indicated by Barbara, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Again, that passes 7-0. We are certainly, as a group, so much for this project that I don't think we can emphasize that enough. Let them know that this is something that we have worked hard on and want to continue. We don't want to hold things up. Again, my fear is that these decisions have to be made, and we want to get it built. So,
and I think Jennifer made a good point towards communication. Jennifer, I think she made a good point about communicating to people what's going on. I think that that's important to thank her for that.
oh, yes, indeed.
These are getting into the Beach Observer.
What is provided, let's see, I believe there were a few press releases included into this. We also, on the town's website, have, it's updated monthly with, the top 10 items. Yeah, if you look, I should have numbered these as articles in the Observer since June. As you see, it includes Bay Oaks Gym could be demolished, future of Bay Oaks overhaul, council approves movie design consultants to Bay Oaks. Yes. That's all I had for item E, Betty.
I think another motion needs to be made that we would prefer to have an overall plan based on the entire concept that we worked on, with the idea that, that we look at specific phases based on budget, that everything that we wanted ultimately be included in all of these.
Is that a motion that you would?
Well, I don't know, I'm throwing it out there because I want a conversation about that.
I like that, but I
do
think
too.
you're going to get the same response. You're going to be told that, well, we don't know what phase 2 can be because we don't know where the money will be.
Yes.
Phase 1, correct.
But there's no overall plan.
In that
Yeah,
concept, the
except-
amphitheater, it's shown,
On the back door,
kinda-
Yes.
it's out the back door. It's,
Right.
it's an afterthought, okay,
Yeah.
is what it is. It's an afterthought.
Because you can go from, what you had planned, and then we can, with them, what they say the budget.
Right, because, for example, if we still have the concept plan being made into an actual phased project that we can do over a number of years, that's the dream. And so
Yes,
when you go
yeah.
to Friends of the Arts, you're
We
gonna.
have to dream.
You're gonna get this, and it says, okay, now you don't have to raise any money. So if the community wants to be a part of this and wants to be involved with fundraising to make this overall dream happen, because it's 10 times better than this one, why would we not have a drawing that shows virtually all of the elements that we've worked hard to make decisions on, and include that in the overall plan? Whether it's 3 buildings or 2 buildings, I think that we basically decided that first building may not be all that essential,
Exactly.
the main pedestrian area. But certainly the idea of the two separate buildings with a walkway in the middle, I thought was a brilliant plan, and I thought it was beautifully drawn in the concept, and I'd like to see this concept.
This one was the first one.
Yes,
I think that's the one you're looking at too, isn't it? Where we
Yes.
had our 3 buildings coming
Yeah.
in.
yes, the three
Right.
buildings.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Is that do you have a motion on the table? Or-
Well, I don't know, I
Well,
want to
I
get it.
think we're getting ready for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we request from town the opportunity to see an entire plan for Bay Oaks based on our original concept, which DRMP has shown us in the conceptual drawing presented, and that we would look at these plans as in various stages, depending on what when the funding would be available.
I second that. I think that was, well,
Okay, we have a second with Jana. Is there further discussion?
I think we should add in there maybe, Barbara, that this conceptual plan dated December 2019.
Okay, great, yes,
That
thank
way
you.
yes.
we have exactly, we're all in sync on which
Exactly.
one.
Yep, December 19,
Yeah,
and yes,
December-
and we can
December
add that date in
2019.
there, yes, and that was, this is the drawing that we're going by. Sorry?
I'll be happy to send that to you, Beth.
And we're going to add that date on there.
I think to bunch everything up in this, it's just so uninspiring.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I'm sorry, there's a motion before the board, so I will shut up.
okay. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Not? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have another 7-0. Matt. And do you understand what we just did?
I certainly do.
Okay, all right. I mean, you were in on this the last couple of years, serving on our Bay Oaks committee, and so you know where we're coming from. And we're happy to have you as our liaison to the council, and we're going to be looking for you to lend us a hand as we go on this. Any
I'll
further-
do everything I can.
Okay, I know you will, and I
Including
understand that,
finding some money.
yeah. Did you hear that? Find us some money?
If it was only that easy.
Yes. Well, we have one of our members that has been active in fundraising.
friends of Bay Oaks. and
Not
that's
me
who
personally,
my-
but
No,
certainly
but-
with the Lovers
Oh,
Keys
do you want her
Park,
phone number?
You got it.
Friends of Lovers Key, and I mean, we've raised $3 million
That's
in
terrific.
that project alone.
I mean,
So-
that's,
Over
That's
time,
phenomenal.
right?
Yeah,
Because
over-
part of that money came from the state, or part of it came from TDC funding.
No, that's 3 million just on our
On
own
their own.
over the
Oh,
last 2
that
years.
you raised over the
It's
last 3 years.
Over what the state is putting into the building.
Fantastic.
because the building was given.
The building was paid for. and
Right,
it's-
right.
It's Friends of Lovers Key job to finish the interior of the building,
Mm-hmm.
and that was to the tune of 3 million.
Do you use a grant writer on that?
We have a fundraiser/grant
Other
writer
successful grant writer.
takes care of all that, and that was all, this last year has been through COVID. So to say that we can't raise money during COVID, that's not true.
No.
And there are grants out there available. No, do I personally know what they are? No, but I know
Right,
there are.
Karen.
We can get some information. So, thank you for that input. Okay, anything else on that? Let's move on then to board member items. Does anybody have, Jana, I'll
Anybody
start
from the
with you.
audience want to talk?
I think I said enough too.
Anna?
I have nothing more to say. I think we got this, I think we nailed it down today.
Yeah, I think we have too.
Yeah.
Beth?
I think
Holly? Aaron?
progress was made.
Lee? Barbara? Okay. I was just going to mention that, I hope this isn't redundant, but at the last council meeting, which I was listening to, I guess that was on Monday morning, they were talking about the walking path and how important that walking path is to our concept, and yet this had it stop right here. And they were even talking about having the arches incorporated in that walking path. I mean,
Or at
did
the-
anybody else hear this?
At the cottage,
No, I
at the
didn't.
cottages, at the historic cottages.
I think the conversation that Jim brought up was need to open up the conversation again about the arches because it has just fallen off.
Yes.
And where, once and for all, where if it could be or not or something like that.
I think part of that, that lack of energy that really sort of stopped the momentum that Stephen McDonald had worked so hard on, had to do with the fact that, the arches actually never belonged on Fort Myers Beach in the first place. They were always on San Carlos Island.
That's right.
And it was actually a functional archway that separated the two streets, one going off the island, one coming on the island, and those were the arches, and that was a specific landmark that was much beloved by all of us, and, Lee and I grew up in the 50s here on the beach, so we remembered those arches. They were a landmark for San Carlos Island as an entrance to the bridge
Yes.
to the island, and at that scale, if you change or mitigate that scale in any way, it no longer becomes a recreation. It becomes an artifact that is sort of reminiscent of, but not the real thing. Plus, it never was supposed to be on Fort Myers Beach in the first place. So I am opposed to putting any arches anywhere on the beach,
Yeah,
period.
I agree.
The reason is, my reason, I know the arches well. I used to climb over them as a kid, pull them off a couple of times. But they have, what I found back in '02, a gentleman, businessman here, got the contractor to pick them up, some of them up. They crumbled them, knocked them over for the new bridge, the Sky Bridge, and take them over to his side yard. And he kept them there, and the weeds grew up around them, and I went over there, and he wanted $35,000 for them, and the Historic Society, or the town couldn't afford that, so we didn't get them. Well, after he died, I guess the estate has passed them on now. And the problem is, they're crumbled. They're in pieces, some tiny pieces, some huge boulder-type pieces. You are not going to recreate the arches.
The arches.
Okay, it's not gonna, you can't, the best stonemason in the country would probably not be able to do it. So it's revisionist history is what we're dealing with here. It's not the arches anymore. And so that's the reason I'm opposed to it. And I'm opposed, they wanted to put them in a little park when he finally bought, and we were opposed to that. But, yes, that came up at the council meeting again the other day, and somebody suggested that the Historic Society, well, I'm former president of the Historic Society here, and I'm going to make it a point to alert A.J. Bassett and ladies of the Historic Society that this has been suggested. So just so they know, because nobody has said anything here at the town about talking to the Historic Society, putting it over there on the property that they lease. Need to know that. Somebody's got to tell them that.
Needs to be put to bed once and for all. I'm
I agree,
very,
Kim.
you know.
I thought it was.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
Actually, it kind of was.
Yeah.
I actually would love to see the council actually make a vote, say that we've looked at all of the options and we understand what the original concept was for these arches, where they were, what purpose they served, and looking at all of the available places and understanding the inability to recreate this at this scale with the same materials, it really should not be discussed, and let's put an end to it. Put an end to it. I
Right.
mean,
Well, the
we
reason-
all love these arches, no question about it,
yeah.
but you can't recreate something that's impossible to put on the same piece of property. Bridge is there now.
The state, they tried to, and the state wouldn't allow them to put it across St. Carlos Boulevard.
That being said, does Dan have any final comments? We can let him go.
That is, the arches are being discussed at the next M&P meeting, brought up to give them direction one way or another.
Okay, that will
Oh,
come up at the
wonderful.
M&P.
Yes, Councilmember Adderholt brought it up at the, under councilmember items to
Right.
add it to the M&P.
Just so you know, Dan, you cannot recreate the arches. It will look nothing like what the arches looked like.
Yeah, I know we've had several conversations with the BORCAB committee over the last few years about it.
Well, and the idea that it was just brought up at the meeting on Monday, I thought was interesting because they're talking about our walking path.
Yeah.
And the
There's no
Historic
place.
Society's
All right,
cottages.
And we haven't adjourned this meeting, so should we then, I mean, have we ever actually made a vote on what we want included in with regard to the arches on Bay Oaks? I mean, should we have a position statement we could then recommend to the council? You know, especially if it's impacting Bay Oaks.
Our position be, we don't want it on our.
Right.
That's right.
Make a motion that, I don't want to make all the motions, so Lee,
Okay.
make the motion.
Make a
Motion,
motion.
yeah.
Okay, here,
I'm giving
Janice.
you everything I've got today. What do you want?
We want a motion saying that we've officially taken the position that the arches do not belong on Bay Oaks property.
Did we vote on that?
Doing that now.
right
But we want you to make a motion to
Okay,
that
but I
effect.
mean, I don't mean, did we vote on that? I mean, is there, no, okay. I'm gonna move that the town of Fort Myers Beach, Bay Oaks Advisory Board recommends against and opposes the attempt to recreate the arches on Fort Myers Beach.
I second.
Okay, second by Jana. Further discussion? Not, all in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Again, we have a
Thank
7
you,
and 0.
Barbara.
Of course, that's a far broader statement because we're now saying the entire Fort Myers Beach. I think our purview really is only Bay Oaks. And
Yeah.
so
Our concern is Bay Oaks
right.
right now.
But he said all of Fort Myers Beach. I don't know
Should we
that that's
amend
our,
it just to say Bay Oaks?
Pardon?
Should we amend it just to say
Bay Oaks, or
Bay
should we?
Oaks?
How does the maker of the motion
Myers
feel?
Beach?
wanna
Tried
say
to
all
get
of
away
Fort
with it. You
Myers.
had to do that.
Okay,
I tried to get away with it. but-
Okay, well,
What?
All right, I'll amend the motion to oppose recreating the arches at Bay Oaks.
And I second.
Okay. We have the motion second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, again, we have a 7-0, and thank you for that amendment.
When is our next meeting?
Our next meeting is December 1st, on a Tuesday, our regular time at 9 a.m. And then we'll be, council meeting will be on the 7th, following
Kind
that.
of hoping that after the council meeting, but that's,
Okay? Anything else you wanted to add to that?
is that 9 a.m. at the next meeting?
9 a.m. Okay. All right. If there is nothing further to come before our group, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay, Barb? Barbara?
Second.
And Aaron, second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And thank you for coming in for this special meeting today. I think that we really have cleared the air on a lot of things, so thank you, everybody, for all your time and effort.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, everyone. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I don't see you, but
Yeah, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
that's it. I see you on the.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, look forward to it, Dan. Look forward to seeing you. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, you too.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Alrighty then.
I think I just hung up on him.
You're good.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it was good.
All right.
All right.
All right, thank you, Betty.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
And I'll let Sarah know that I won't be here December 1st.
Yes, okay, good. I mean, not good that you won't be here, but good that you're getting that taken care of.
I'm not certain if.
But that's important.
I know that the council.
Thank you.
I will.